Oliver Jung, kommer från den europeiska branschföreningen för värmepumpar, EHPA. Och han ska berätta om industriella värmepumpar på den internationella marknaden. Most welcome, Oliver Jung.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Victor. So, as was said, I represent the European Heat Pump Association. I also have developed recently an interest for life coaching. And one thing that I have learned in life coaching is that one of the ways you actually get older is when you get sure that you know things. So I can reassure you that on this presentation, I'll probably not become too much older, because as you see here, I'm actually, now I have to get that run right, I'm actually EU Affairs Manager. So usually I am the one in Brussels who talks to policymakers. So should you have at the end of this presentation any technical question, or should you wonder on some technical aspects of what I'll have presented, then I'll be more than pleased to take this back home to my colleague experts who can then provide you all that information. So this being said, a couple of words about our association. So we have 130 members spread all around Europe, you see in 22 countries, and our members are heat pump manufacturers, component manufacturers. We have national associations, such as the one that's inviting us today here, consultants, research and test institutes. So all those who have an interest in heat pumps are welcome in our association. And then, of course, we have also a vision. Our vision is a fully decarbonized Europe with heat pump technologies, where heat pump technologies are the #1 heating and cooling solution, and so being a core enabler for renewable, sustainable and smart energy system. Because we should never forget the why of all what we're doing, and we have seen that despite lots of effort, we see that energy demand is still growing. Carbon emissions also grew in 2018 at the fastest rate in 7-8 years. So there's really a lot to be done for our planet, and also a lot to be done to decouple the industrialization of Europe, which is needed, from the increase of CO2 emissions. And so here, of course, that's a presentation that I use for public that maybe knows less about heat pumps than probably the audience here. However, I'll still go through a couple of slides here, because maybe you're not so old. You know that heat pumps provide heating and cooling. This is the major thing on which we insist in Brussels, because this allows to differentiate our technology for other technologies. So heat pumps are high quality technology, which requires sometimes some upfront investment. But if you are able to do this for both heating and cooling, then you already have a different discourse back in Brussels when you discuss with policymakers. Something else as well is that it's not only an issue of cooling and heating, but you have also a potential of demand-side flexibility, of improving air quality, dehumidification, and all these are needs that policymakers are looking for in Brussels. So again, if we can present heat pumps as being able to provide solution to all this, that will help improve the image of heat pumps. So as you know, heat pumps can provide heating, cooling, and hot water production, and it can be done in residential applications, commercial application, industrial application, district heating, and big buildings. Today, I'll focus obviously on the industrial application, and I will say a couple of words on district heating as well. So this you know probably better than myself, that there are different technical possibilities to split within the world of heat pumps. That's maybe something that you can learn today, is a bit how the market looks like. All heat pumps if we look at all heat pumps being installed in Europe, so we see that it's constantly growing. So in 2018 we had 12% growth, and we have today 11.8 million heat pump installed all around Europe. Also, something to link to my first initial reply to why we're doing this. Obviously, heat pumps also provide added value in terms of contribution to renewable energy production, the demand response potential, final energy savings, CO2 savings, and also clean air, which is sometimes the issue which in some Eastern countries is sometimes a better hook than CO2 reductions. So here, if we were to take 1,000 households, here are the percentages around the percentages of heat pumps within those 100 households, and you can see that Sweden is scoring quite well here. You're number 4, I think. So you're definitely a heat pump friendly country. So on industrial heat pumps, we have a little issue, is that we have currently no real stats, but we have our working group which is trying to still present, showcase a potential so that we can build on that. So probably you know as well also how our industrial heat pump look like. The two things that I want to mention here is that in terms of when you sell this to people who actually would like to ask you what's the added value in terms of climate or even also financially, is that there is of course the whole use of the waste heat. That's so whatever in an industrial process would be lost here, it can be reused, and there's also the additional use of renewable energy. So with an industrial heat pump, you score on different boards, so renewable energy and energy efficiency. So if we look at so in the industrial heat pumps, I have a little bit split things, even if technically probably it's the same process, but I've split between the industrial heat pumps that I use by the industry to improve the efficiency of what the industry is doing, and the industrial heat pumps that I used to use the excess heat generated by the industry that can then be used somewhere else, for instance in district heating. So if I look just at, start with the first angle, which is the industrial heat pumps for the industrial applications, that's a message that we have received from a very high official from the Commission, and we see that they don't know as well anything about the industrial heat pumps. So they mainly see heat pumps as having a potential for residential and commercial area. Here again, if we look at the statistics that we have and how we can compare with boilers, with current fossil fuel technologies, again, this part here is missing. But we found a solution to still quantify industrial heat pumps for industrial application. So we know that heat pumps have a potential in all those various areas which I mentioned there. So minerals processing, non-ferrous metals, coffee and cocoa production, food production, chemicals processing, textile manufacturing, and they can provide different benefits: thermal comfort for building and offices, that's obvious, heating, cooling for other purposes, drying, dehumidification, and heat generation for production processes. And so we know that the different input sources from that industry can be like I would say for any kind of heat pump, air, ground, water, but then you have in addition the possibility to have process cooling or heating, process water, turbine, oil cooling, solar heating, and condensing as being the input. That input being up to 70 degrees Celsius, and then you have the magic of the industrial heat pump, which will then push up the temperature higher, and today it can be pushed up to 160 degrees. And with 160 degrees, then already you have all these industrial processes. I'll not go through all of them here, but all those which are important processes for the industry, they can be already covered by the additional push that the industrial heat pump can bring to in that exercise. So what have we have an industrial and commercial heat pump working group. So what have my colleagues done? They have looked at Eurostat data on for all of these sectors, and let me go through this. And so they have calculated, or let's say Eurostat says that the final energy consumption for all of these, let me go back, all of these sectors down there. Okay, so I don't know if you can read it, but it's the one I mentioned earlier. So for all of these sectors, the final energy consumption is 3,700 terawatt hour, which then converted in, if we look at the energy conversion efficiency, if we convert it in useful energy and useful heat energy consumption, then we get to 2,000 terawatt hours. And then the exercise that my colleagues have done is they have looked at all of these sectors. What are the temperature requirements for the various processes required in each of this industry? And so you see that the colors here are linked to different temperatures. And then you will see in the next slide. That's right here. So that there are some range of temperatures, or everything that's above 160, which cannot be covered currently by industrial heat pumps, but everything that's below those three categories here, there is a possibility for heat pumps. And so if we do a quick math exercise, we look at the 2,000 terawatt hours that I mentioned earlier, and we compared to summing up all of this, we end up to the fact that currently there's a potential for, to be very precise, I think it's 8.7% of the current needs of industry can be covered by industrial heat pumps. So I wanted to show also different projects that exist, that we're participating in, and that look at how we can better use heat pumps in industry. So since I have 5 minutes left, I will go quick. This is the dry efficiency project. You will have probably the slides or be able to look at this. So here it's a project that looks at the use of heat pump to improve all drying processes. So you see that there are three industries that have been willing to test the added value of heat pumps for the creation of powder material, lumpy bulky material, and very bulky material. So these three companies, each time there's a need to dry, and so the question was, how can the presence of a heat pump avoid the energy consumption of fossil fuels? So these are the partners. There are more examples of heat pumps being used for industrial applications. As I don't have much time, I just invite you to have a look at this. So you see each time the cup here for that one is 4.8, so it's quite good. Here 4.9 in the Nagold facility. In Hamburg, a cup of 5. Here 3.4 here in Switzerland, looking at how to make more efficient food production. Here still in Switzerland, this is Chrono chipboard, chocolate, beverages. So these were the examples that I gave of how heat pumps can help make the business case of existing industry better. And then of course you have all the possibility to use heat pumps once you have excess heat coming from the industry to be reused that in district heating systems. So I will not go through all the examples here. You will see them in the slides. And I think this is something also that's quite known here in Sweden. I think you have a lot of district heating system, and then you have also a lot of heat pumps operating in those district heating systems. So what can we do if we want really to allow this potential to be fulfilled, or even to have let's say even a better framework for industrial heat pumps? So it's look at the favorable conditions. So wherever there's heating and cooling need in parallel, that's a good spot. Wherever there's a spatial connection between the need for heat and the need for cool, where there's enough waste heat, of course, when there is an energy that is needed at lower temperature, because I told you that still for higher temperature, of course, there's some more research that's needed there. And then, of course, wherever you have political requirements to fulfill certain targets, then policymakers are looking for solutions, and so industrial heat pumps can be part of these solutions. There are, of course, some challenges. So currently, industrial heat pumps, it's a B2B business, so it's not something that's for the moment produced in a standardized way. So having more demand and more standardization would, of course, help this to spread. Of course, there's a need for training, high temperature, I mentioned it already, and some supportive policies. I'll not go through all the European targets, although personally I like speaking on policies, but just for you to remember that there's a policy environment now that will allow, or that will force policymakers around Europe to look for solutions. And these solutions could be industrial heat pumps. There's also this Energy Watch group that was working on the assumption that we want to be 100% renewable in 2050. And so what they, based on that assumption, basically it means that heat pump will have to be used in approximately 27% of industrial heat processes. So you see the jump from 8.7 to 27 will require some additional work on some policy barriers that exist, the energy price ratio, if you look at difference between electricity and gas in certain countries, energy taxation, the fact that CO2 price is not internalized, the fossil subsidies that still exist, and of course the fact that now we see more and more a hype behind gas, green gas, etc., which is not bad per se, but might lead to the fact that you then have less visibility for certain solutions like heat pumps. So in these slides, I was just going through the explanation of all this. So at EHPA, what we do is we have an industrial working group that is looking at solutions to further promote industrial heat pumps. We also organize very frequently webinars, which go much more deeper than the presentation I was been able to give you today, to explain technically how you can, what's the potential of industrial heat pumps. So really those webinars will be available soon. If you're interested, please register. We contact policymakers, and we also do some brochures. We're currently updating our brochure on industrial heat pump, and also it will be available on our website. So to conclude, the industrial heat pump technology is today ready to deliver its share of the job to reach the different targets, but further developments are still possible, especially for higher temperatures. We need more data on industrial heat pumps because we're working with assumptions. And I forgot to tell you, but one of the reasons we don't have the data also is because there is some confidentiality as well. So some industries are so happy to have these heat pumps because that they see it as a comparative advantage to their competitors, and they do not want to disclose to certain, they don't want manufacturers to disclose that they have installed a heat pump in their industry. So sometimes they are a victim of their own success. So more is needed to explain the potential of heat pumps, industrial heat pumps, to policymakers and industry, and then a positive market and policy framework is needed. If you have any kind of further examples that we would not know about, please share them with us. And please also help us spread the word around industrial heat pumps because it's a topic that's not so much covered. So I think we'll all benefit from further promoting it. I've been a little bit long. Thank you very much for your attention. And I don't know if we have still time for questions or if I've been with time. So
Thank you very much, Oliver. Do we have any questions? Jag kan översätta om någon vill ställa dem på svenska. Then I have a question. If a Swedish company wanna export into Europe, what do you think is the single most important difference between selling here in Sweden and somewhere in Europe, let's say Germany?
Just that I understand the question, is it linked to industrial heat pumps or not necessarily?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so your question is, if a Swedish company wants to sell in Europe, normally we are in an internal market. So the main, if I talk about smaller heat pumps, the ones which are subject to eco-design measures, the eco-design measures are the same in the whole single market. So any Swedish company has the right under European law to sell everywhere in Europe. And should it be more difficult for a Swedish company to sell in France or in Germany than to a German company or a French company, then it's a breach of EU law. So that's a specific problem. Now, if we look at industrial heat pumps, there of course the question principle would be the same. The difference, however, is that since industrial heat pumps are not a standardized product for the moment, subject to eco-design and to European rules, a lot will be currently built through a business discussion between the district heating system or between the industry and the producer of the heat pump. And in such kinds of business discussion, then sometimes the geographical proximity, the language, again, sorry for not being able to make this presentation in Swedish, but the language can have a de facto impact. So I would say if you want to export and install heat pumps, please know that you have a European law that is protecting you, but it's also very helpful if you can make good friends everywhere in Europe, because I think that will be at the end of the day what will allow you to make a deal.
Excellent. Thank you.